It is redonkulous.com. With no further talking, I'd just love to bring him on stage. Get ready, take notes. Mr. Terrence Popp.
How y'all doing? Slow me down a little bit. All right, I'm going to start off a little joke here. I'm a big father's rights, men's rights kind of guy. So when I hear all of the talking about these single mothers out there who think they should do away with Father's Day because there's way more of them than there are actual fathers. Now, statistically speaking, they would be correct. And it's probably not because the fathers don't want to be around. They were just driven off. So most men, if you're like me, you really don't give a crap about punctuation. It's just some annoyance that happens in the Microsoft Office program when you're typing up whatever you're doing. Especially commas. Commas, to me, is nothing more than a suggestion. So father is spelled F-A-T-H-E-R. Why can't we just put a comma in the middle and just say fat her? Kill two birds with one stone. I hope that pisses him off, because it's true. Okay, let's see. Well, for those of you that don't know, I did 33 years in the military, 12 Guard Reserve, the rest of it active duty. I did a lot of the cool stuff that most people would like to do. I was an airborne ranger, Green Beret, paratrooper. I did 3 wars. I was almost killed in 2. And luckily, I didn't die. I make fun of it. You know, I make jokes in regards to people who have one leg. I call them a circle walker. And somebody who's only one arm is a circle swimmer. Well, I got my brain pan shook pretty bad, so I'm a circle thinker. So one of the side effects that I have is I don't sleep for shit. Most people think, oh, that's terrible. But just imagine if you didn't have to sleep 8 hours a day, say you only just sleep 3 or 4. Well, guess what? I got an additional 20 to 25% to plot and scheme to take over the world. It is awesome. All right, I'm going to set the stage here for you, what we as men are looking forward to. Okay, as you know, the stats for first marriages, 50% of them end in divorce. Second marriages, 63% end in divorce. Third marriages, 73 to 75% end in divorce. And 80% of those divorces are filed by, you guessed it, women. So, those are some terrible circumstances and thick odds that stand against you, especially if you don't have a prenup, which doesn't really mean anything nowadays, or you have children. Because 85% of the time, no matter what happens, that woman is getting custody of those children, and you are not. Some guy in some robes is going to pound a hammer somewhere and tell you, hey, you had your kids 365, 24/7, but now you get to see them 4 days a month, and you're going to pay out your ass. Now, and this is the part I find hilarious. I'm paying child support for kids I don't get to see, and basically I'm financing the roof over their head and the revolving door in the front and back as the parade of dudes come through there after I'm out of the way. Does anybody else here think that's it's kind of shitty? Because, yeah, I got you. All right, since this is going to be on YouTube, I'm going to try to cut down on the swearing. I'm going to use a certain code that I was forced to use when I was in the civil affairs because, you know, the Army started to go all politically correct and get all upset. All right, so I'm going to start off here. The human being comes in 2 models. One male, one female. Both of them are relatively similar. Slot A. This is where you put food in there. I call it slot A because that's the first letter of the acronym Assisted Super Stupid. Because if they don't know you're an idiot and you open your mouth and you start talking, well, it's just a matter of time before people figure it out. The second one is slot B. That's where the food comes out when you're done digesting it. And that's the first letter of an acronym back under taint. Now, we're going to get into the male model, which has a PEG D, which is the first letter of the acronym Deployable Inseminator Carrier Kit. And of course, we have the slot C, which is the female version, which stands for Can't Understand Normal Thinker. All right, now, a lot of women out there are going to get upset. I don't care. Because let's face it, when you're dealing with a creature that makes decisions based on emotions, which change on a whim and are not really related to the real world, that's exactly what that acronym stands for. All right. Now, in my 33 years in the military, I have seen thousands of men train wreck their lives in very similar ways. Now, when I say train wreck your life, I mean homeless, unemployed, because that is exactly what happened to these people. A lot of them are very young. They come in the military at 18, get married at 19, divorced at 20, stay in the military until their first enlistment's over, get out because they have to chase the baby mother all over the United States. And I was guilty of this myself, and I'm sure many of you out there are guilty of this as well. Selecting women strictly on looks. Listen, I'm a fan of tits and ass just like anyone else out there. All right? I've got my own story. And I've also noticed that a lot of men who come from single mother homes like myself have a really weird sense of what the ideal woman looks like for them. And most of the time, that ideal woman is unobtainable. And even if you do obtain it, you don't own it. It's just your turn. All right, that's a brutal truth. Now, I myself, when I was 16, had a very traumatic incident happen where I was basically shacked up with a chick that I was lucky enough to run across, who was graduated from high school, so I considered myself a stud. And things were happening on the living room couch, and all of a sudden, guess who appears? Not my mother. No, that's bad enough. My grandmother shows up, catches me with body parts exposed, leaves the house, and here's the worst part. She's married to my grandfather, who's a minister. Can it get any worse than that? So for weeks, I avoided going over there. And finally, I was forced to go to the Sunday dinner. And my grandfather shows up at the front door to answer it when we're walking up in his collar and everything. And I love that guy because this is what he did. He opened the door and he's just like, I knew I was golden. I knew I was golden. Because I thought I was going to get lectured up one side, down the other. And I remember my aunt, after we got done eating dinner that night, started setting in on me about what I had done. And I just looked at her and I said, listen, I like slutty women. And my grandfather right behind me said, hey, he has his preferences. At least we know he's not gay. So needless to say, I've been following my pecker up until the age of 34. That's another saying I came up with, is most of the men out here are dick thinking between the ages of 13 and 34. Now, I don't know about you, But that little head hanging on the end of your peg D is making decisions for you that is train wrecking your life. The end of that little head's got what, 7, 8 square centimeters of nerve endings. And it's got the hole at the end where all the bad decisions come out. But somehow it's ruining your lives and it's running your lives. So gentlemen, my job here is try to get you to get beyond the dick thinking phase before you train wreck your lives. All right? Because by the time I got to 34 and I realized, and it was crazy because I hadn't been divorced yet. And I just got back from Iraq. And I remember I'm writing checks for bullshit because my ex-wife wanted to keep up with the Joneses, which is just a recipe for more drama. And I remember I'm sitting down there writing the check, and I'm like, are those titties worth this? I don't think they are. And that was the beginning of the end. Because after that, I was still jacked up in the brain pan, and my ex-wife decided to go cuckoo for Cocoa Penis Puffs. There was a couple of kielbasa's in there, an Italian sausage. It was a couple of egg rolls. It was unrecoverable. And allegedly, there might have been a whole fire department. I don't know. It's a lot of Eskimo brothers, if you ask me, but what are you going to do? Now, it's one of my weaknesses. I love a good 15, front bumper with 10 to 15 mile an hour rear bumper, preferably with a red hair model, but I also go for Latino women. I have a weakness for that. I'm just being honest. So when I catch myself in those situations now, at my age, I remember I'm like, all right, she's got the curves of a 76 Corvette. Everything looks good. There are more things I need to check out here before I decide if I'm going to let this person into the inner sanctum, or it's just going to be a casual thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with casual things. I'm not a super religious person, and it is what it is. It is what it is, as long as you're honest up front with them, and you avoid bad karma that way. I'm a firm believer in karma, because I've seen it work up close and personal. Next thing. Man, I just going off today like a goddamn fire hose here. All right. As the first sergeant, it is my job to issue passes, discipline soldiers, counsel them, which I did on thousands of occasions. And I can't tell you how many times I had a 19-year-old who will show up in front of my desk asking me for a 4-day pass because she's getting married on Friday. And I'll be like, really? Getting married? Huh? Where'd you meet this girl? Oh, I met her at Peepers. She's a cocktail waitress. Like, oh, okay. That's great. I pull out the pass paperwork and filling it out. I pulled out the yellow pages, go to the divorce attorneys. I knew a guy in the area. I write his number at the top. I hand it to him after I sign it. I was allowed to do that as a first sergeant. And he's like, First Sergeant, what is this number? I'm like, oh, that's the number to your divorce attorney you're going to need in 18 to 24 months, because that's what's going to happen. And sure as shit, 18 months later, and I heard all of the train wreck bullshit that was going on in this young soldier's life. 18 months later, standing in front of my desk, singing the blues. And I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do for you, Hess. You're moving back into barracks, and we're going to start that allotment for the divorce attorney. Oh, here's your old past paperwork. There's the phone number. Call him. I've done that dozens of times. And a few of them I was actually able to talk these young bucks back from the brink of basically destroying themselves. All right, now here's another favorite maneuver that I like that women usually will pull. And it's almost like clockwork. When they're walking back from the altar after they've been married, you can see it happening. before they get to the door of the church, they reach into their cleavage and they pull the pin on the fat grenade and they blow the heck up. Try not to swear. And that's where you wind up with a lot of FUPA and FUBA issues. And the FUPA is the fat upper pussy area. That causes a lot of problems. And the difference between that and the fat upper belly area is you got to hold one up to get at the goodies. Otherwise, it'll break your neck. That's terrible. And I don't know how some of these soldiers stay married to these women after they do that, because I personally consider that a betrayal. I mean, even if they have a kid and they fall back on the, it's baby weight. Okay. Well, it took you, 9 months to gain that weight. It should take you 9 months to lose the weight, not 9 years. Because after the 9-month mark, it goes from baby weight to fat. Okay. Now, people are like, oh, you're fat shaming. I really don't keep a lot of fat people around in my inner sanctum because, my ex-wife was 3 of them. Like I said, most of this shit sorry for swearing, God. Most of the stuff I'm telling you guys, I did it myself. I'm not some sanctimonious, douchebag telling you guys stuff that I myself have no experience with. All right, so here's the second one here. A lot of these guys ignore the woman's history. All right, now, listen, we all have a smartphone, which means you are $38 to $62 away from doing a background search on said woman that you want to have in your life. Okay, if you don't do that, you're a lazy ass and you did it to yourself. Okay, it's worth the investment. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had soldiers who shack up with these ladies that have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in student loans and maybe $15,000 in credit cards. In fact, this is actually crazy. As a first sergeant, I usually deal with enlisted guys, right? Had a full bird colonel. I walk in there to his office. This new squeeze is coming through there, and she looks fine. I sit him down. I'm like, hey, sir, what's going on here? Tell me the deal. Because he'd been divorced for 3 years. I'm like, are you really going to do this again? Because she's, your first wife is already getting half your retirement. Are you going to risk the rest of it? Pull a background check on this woman. And he did. $75,000 student debt for some bullshit degree that only pays, $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Okay, with that kind of money that you're making on the back end, it's just not economically viable to do that. And I got him to pull back from the brink and, not actually commit to this lady and do the string along method, which I made a whole video on. I taught him how to do that as well. But my thing is this. Almost always, the minute you pay off the last dollar she owes, guess what's going to happen? You're no longer the nice guy. You just helped her out. She's going to monkey branch right to the next penis and leave you in the dust. Okay? And you put in all that monumental effort to pay off her stuff, she's gone.